I am telling you guys, we are in a fight for our minds. These are psychological wars that they impart upon the people, and I have never seen one more extreme than this Charlie Kirk cover-up that the feds are engaged in. Speaking of which, I've heard the rumors, obviously, that Dan Bongino, which it looks like Trump has just confirmed, is going to leave the FBI. As assistant director of the FBI, he will be stepping down. Trump said that he thinks that Dan wants to get back to his show. I think Dan has probably realized how far-reaching this corruption goes. I have been wondering why Dan has been silent, I would say effectively silent, on the Charlie Kirk situation. He has not been a part of the people that have been feeding us trash. And maybe his silence is actually some dignity. Like saying, I'm not going to take part in this. And he's doing maybe what Marjorie Taylor Greene did and said, this is hopelessly broken. And I feel like I'm betraying the American people, and he's going to leave. And maybe he feels like he can fight better from behind the mic. And I certainly am feeling like we are doing a lot here just by investigating this truly. And when I say we, I genuinely mean you guys back at home, because I feel like we're all kind of waking up to just how much the military controls how botted comment sections can be. I click on this person and they just created an account. That's a war on your mind, okay? That's a war on your mind. So sticking with this theme of federal corruption that transpired on that day, a major question, and I need to do more research on this, that in terms of like who was driving and what everybody said on the day. But what happened to the car that Charlie was driven into the hospital while he was still alive? Or better yet, what do you think should have happened to that car, or what is required to happen to a car after someone is assassinated in a car, or like is bleeding in a car and there's evidence? I would have assumed that the feds impounded the vehicle. Do we agree? That seems like every show that you watch. I used to watch 48 Hours. You got to impound the vehicle so that you can then collect more evidence. Well, the only indication of what we have learned from people that were actually in that vehicle on that day came from Frank Turk. And he does discuss with Megyn Kelly him getting his bag at the hospital after the FBI cleared the vehicle. I don't want to put words into his mouth. Let's take a listen to what Frank Turk had to say.
They roped off the vehicle that we took out of there as a crime scene. I don't know why. It wasn't part of the crime scene, really. So we couldn't get into the vehicle until the FBI cleared it. And it happened that Charlie, in the back seat below him, between these two bucket seats, was my computer bag. So everything, I couldn't go anywhere. You know, my wallet was in there. I wasn't going anywhere anyway, but I had to go in and get that out. And so when they finally cleared it, I got into the car and I pulled out my bag, and draped over my bag was Charlie's necklace that had a cross and medallions on it. And I had heard they were looking for that. And so cop was like, "Oh, we've been looking for that." I said, "I got it." So I just took it.
Okay. So he's explaining that they did say this is a crime scene. Obviously, there could be evidence in here that we need. That makes sense to me. But they allow him to grab his bag and Charlie's necklace, and he goes away. And I would have assumed that they then impounded the vehicle for further inspection. But that if I had assumed that, I would be wrong, actually. What happened is immediately after the car was transported to it was towed to a towing facility that's just kind of really around the corner from the hospital. And then from there on Monday, they had another tow truck come and take that car so that it could get a cleaning and be immediately put up for auction. Now, this is unusual on two ends of this. I'll tell you what those two ends are. The first end is that this was a rental vehicle, right? And even if a crime happens in a rental vehicle, especially a brand new one that is that big, you as the owner of a rental car facility, you have an option to get that car back. You have an option, obviously, to get that car back, to get it cleaned. If you're going to get the whole thing recarpeted, that would be a tremendous loss against the company for you to just, never mind, whatever, sell it. Well, apparently And I'm saying this allegedly, the owner of the company was in California at the time. He gets a phone call and he's just like, no, never want to see this vehicle ever again at our facility. I don't want there to be any PTSD for the people that work here at the rental facility. Just like get rid of it. You could sell it and that's it. It's never coming back here. Maybe that is just kind of the good-natured response. I would assume they weren't going to, haul it in with all of Charlie's blood in it. But the speed at which this vehicle was just given up effectively for auction is unusual, especially because they didn't even require insurance to come, which would make sense. We know how this works. You can't collect, even if you're going to say, whatever, I want to get rid of this vehicle. You're going to want to make sure that you have tons of pictures and evidence, and you got to send the insurance guys. The insurance guys have to talk about how much damage has been done to this vehicle. I don't know who has to pay for it to be fixed before it can be sold, but you're going to have to send insurance. None of that happened, okay? Just like, woof, that's it. The feds saw it. Everything's going down at the hospital. The feds are really at this hospital, and then it's over. I find that to be very strange. I have 6 photos of the inside of that vehicle. We are on the fence about, and I don't know what you guys think in terms of YouTube and showing this, or are we going to have to put this up on the website when we drop all of the Egyptian plane logs? What do we think, guys? I'm letting you, Mark, make a decision here about whether or not, and if we do show this, is obviously like very viewer discretion advice. People have watched crime scenes on the news. Should we, what do you think? You think the one we'll show one of them that's not so gory? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think the back row is probably the best. Like, this is just so you guys know that we're not making up that we have these photos. We do. We have these photos and they tell a story. And I think it's important to share these photos with people, which I'm going to do. Investigators. When I say investigators, I mean like mommy sleuths and investigators on the ground who have been looking into this story and not accepting the Fed slop. I think it's a good thing. I think we can come out of that so you guys can see. It's interesting. It is very interesting. And it tells, I think, and just more pieces can come together. I think we need to know where everybody was sitting in this car, what everybody said. I know that there have been people that have been doing that work, and I intend to partner with them to just make sure that everything makes sense. Okay. Now, pivoting, because what I'm really getting at and what I have been clear about from the very beginning, I just think the feds are implicated. I do. I just feel the feds are implicated. Everything they are doing, everything that we are learning, everything that I know tells me that they went there to cover everything up. Including sending U.S. Marshals on a wild goose chase. Everybody who's there that day says the feds were not acting right. They don't actually feel like they wanted to solve the crime, but rather to create hurdles, including Cash saying, we got him. And then it wasn't the person, oh, never mind, we made a mistake, was to stop people from actually discovering who killed Charlie Kirk in those critical hours following the shot. Like they were attempting to disrupt, actually. And I believe that. So, like I said to you guys yesterday, and don't worry, every following 2 days, we're just going to have bombs for you guys. But I really sense there has been this ratcheting up of what I have been telling you all year. There are military bots. These are military grade bots that are online. I saw them after October 7th. I saw these military grade bots when they wanted me canceled from Australia. I just recognize the pattern of what they do. They kind of all say the same thing, and it just is meant to get into your psyche. But we recognized this increase in this botted activity after we started speaking about Fort Wuka. Talked about Fort Wuka. We talked about, this guy. He's convinced that he saw Brian Harpole, and we start talking about the Egyptian planes. All of this is on the same day. We're getting a picture, and that felt really relevant, that he believes he stumbled upon this, all hands on deck final meeting the day before. And initially people thought, man, I think maybe somebody's pulling Candace. And then we were able to verify his story. People that are currently stationed there. Well, I want to now, and this is a longer clip, but I think it's important because we went through trying to point to you guys the fact that there is this weird plane activity going to that base. I want to now play this longer clip of Baron Coleman. He did just a really great video going through and helping people to understand what it means when you see that SAM call sign on a plane that is flying, particularly from Andrews outside of DC. And I'm going to play this longer clip of Baron Coleman and hope he doesn't hit me for stealing his content. Take a listen.
Well, tonight I can confirm that following Candace's show last night, I started some research. And what I found floored me. I don't know who contacted Candace or whether he's credible, but I do know this. If that man or anyone else is running an op on Candace and trying to trap her into a story that doesn't add up, ultimately to destroy her reputation, they planted a key piece of evidence into the story that lends a lot of credibility to what he said. That key piece of evidence is a jet that's used exclusively by very few people. And those people are presidential family members, cabinet officials, and military generals at the Pentagon, such as the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And that jet was present at the location of the supposedly high-level meeting the day before Charlie was killed. I was watching Candace Owens this afternoon, so I know she covered the presence of the jet. I'm going to go further with that story, but I'll recap for those who aren't aware of the story, and I'll add considerable detail that she did not report. The flight was a special air mission flight. The United States Air Force Special Air Mission exists to provide safe and secure transport to our country's highest-ranking individuals. Think president, vice president, presidential and vice presidential family members, cabinet members, occasionally congressional delegations. That particular jet was present at the location of this alleged meeting on the morning of September 9th, one day before the neutralization of Charlie Kirk. And that jet had recently flown, for example, President Trump's family back from their summer home in Bedminster, New Jersey. I'll show you that in a minute. That flight was after the Independence Day holiday. So this is an important jet. I'm going to give you a quick breakdown of what are known SAM call signs, SAM, Special Air Mission call signs, because it's going to be important as we work our way through the flight logs of this jet. A Special Air Mission call sign is a designation for airlift missions carrying the president, vice president, first lady, cabinet secretaries, or other VIPs designated by the White House. When the president is on board, the radio call sign instantly becomes Air Force One. But the telephonic ATC call sign on the flight plans and on radar scopes is filed as SAM number. We'll talk about that in a second. When the vice president is on board, the aircraft becomes Air Force Two. But again, the filed call sign is normally SAM number. The same SAM call sign series is used for other cabinet members, like Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and the First Lady when they travel on jets. And sometimes you'll see a rare call sign, very rare call sign. It's SAM 000. Sometimes you'll see a 001 or a 002. But when you see zeros leading the call sign, particularly 000, that call sign is highly sensitive. It's when the White House or the U.S. Air Force want to be deliberately vague about the exact passenger manifest. On August 25th, 2025, this is 16 days before Charlie Kirk was killed, there was a flight on this jet from D.C. to Colorado Springs with that important and rarely used call sign, SAM 000. Whoever flew under this incredibly highly sensitive call sign, SAM 000, on August 25, flew from Joint Base Andrews to Colorado Springs, home of the 10th Special Forces Group. It stayed in Colorado Springs for 3 hours, and then it flew to Las Vegas, arriving there at 4:48 p.m. local time. Las Vegas, you'll recall, is the home of FBI Director Kash Patel.
Okay, so he's just delivering the facts. There's nothing here. There's no innuendo there. Later on, he's trying to just think while it's still legal, I guess. And he's like, well, we don't know where J.D. Vance was on this day. I can confirm I was able to dig through a lot and find J.D. Vance was in D.C. This is not Trump. This is not J.D. Vance. So that allows us to come inward and try to figure out who this Sam, very big Sam, on the special air mission was. Okay. He mentions there Kash Patel. Obviously, we don't have at our fingertips Kash Patel's schedule, but it is intriguing that this flight, as he says, goes into Las Vegas. And we're going to now show you that flight path, bring that up. And I'm going to also tell you why that August 25th date is particularly interesting when I pack it into my neat little timeline. Now, because we are looking at data and time zones, I'm going to bring in Mark explain that August 25th trip and how the call signs change, which is even more fascinating.
Thank you for using the preferred term for this, Mark explaining. So on August 25th, let me make this full screen so everyone can see it better. So on August 25th, it flies into Las Vegas, lands at 4:48 p.m. local time as Sam 000. Then on the following day, the 26th, it leaves Las Vegas as a Reach flight 658, leaving at 3:14 p.m. You see the dash at the end there that shows that the transponder data was missing before it lands in Colorado Springs, which you can see on the map here. Let me scroll back down, and you can see that it lands there at an unknown time because of that data discrepancy. Then it takes off as a SAM 658 flight back to Joint Base Andrews in DC.
Okay. And so when you see that, when you see the call sign changing from an RCH to a SAM, is it fair for me to say that this means that this was somebody who was important and then there was somebody who was extremely important who either got on or got off, SAM being that super, super VIP, which Baron Coleman just explained? Is that a fair description?
I'd say so. The special air mission designation is usually when there's very high ranking or very important people on board. Reach is kind of like there's nobodies on board. I don't want to say nobodies, but someone who doesn't rise to that level. And then the other call sign we've seen is Venus, which is a designator for an empty flight, except for the pilots.
Okay. So going back to that, look, just so you guys can see that, looking at that August 25th date. So we're seeing that the individual flies in to Colorado Springs. Now, why is this date interesting? Well, we're going to pop into the timeline, and I'm going to remind you first and foremost that Brian Harpole, when he sits down with Sean Ryan, tells us that they began preparations for the UVU event. And I'm bringing up Brian Harpole, of course, because our eyewitness told us that he saw Brian Harpole. He's convinced he saw Brian Harpole walking out of this big wig meeting on the 9th. Now, I can't confirm what he saw, but I can look into things that Brian Harpole has said to the public since things have transpired. And he particularly points out this date of August 24th of having been when they prepared for UVU. Take a listen to Brian Harpole in his own words on Sean Ryan.
How many days prior were you guys there?
We generally, the permitting process and all that goes on behind the scenes. And then there's questionnaires that are filled out that we used to. There was a lot of busy work. And then so, kind of like in the military, what you did, we create forms that, hey, let's get this information up front. Mm-hmm. And so that we have a duplication process so that we can confirm it. And so we started our first, before that one, the 24th of the month prior. And so, and that was with the hard conversations, meetings.
You started that on the 24th?
Mm-hmm. Right. And we
That's
do
2 weeks.
At
early.
least. Well, it started before that with the intelligence gathering and all that. But the hard conversations, the sharing of information, the conference calls, the data sheets, and we put that in a timeline on an app so that this all goes up and every guy that's on that job can see all the intel that comes in. It's a decentralized command model for the company. And so anybody can make command decisions for the betterment of the client or the team. And so everything goes on that app. And so when I get it, they get it. And when whoever's gathering that intel, it gets it. There's no hold, there's no power hold on it. And so that first information came in on the 24th, and then the information share starts.
Now, to be extra clear, I am not suggesting that Brian Harpole, obviously he's not going to be SAM, or is he going to be RCH, but I'm just noting that he is saying that the 24th is when they began this process of intel gathering for the UVU event. It also happens to be the exact date that Operation Valhalla strike begins between civilians and the military. It happened on August 24th and ended on August 27th. I'm going to show you this now on the timeline so that you can see that. So then we have the very next day on the 25th, we have this very important character who decides to fly over to Colorado Springs. And then that important character flies into Las Vegas. Presumably he departs off of the plane, he or she, I'm going to go with he here. I don't know why. I feel like that's right. He is going to get off of the plane in Las Vegas, and suddenly that flight is going to be an RCH flight. Okay, so someone less important than our initial SAM. I find that to be very interesting, and I find it to be compelling. And when I said this to Harry and said, is it possible that this could have been like a high-ranking Fed? he said, yeah, it was pretty clear that they were trying to block him. This is hence them freaking out from seeing who was coming out of that meeting. That was the hustle. That's what they were fearful of. He said that there was an undercover Fed, or he said it could have been an undercover Secret Serviceman. He was, like I said, had this many 06s, lieutenant colonels, signifies to be that this is like a Pentagon level meeting. Everything he has said is checked out. I am telling you, we have multiple emails from people that are currently stationed there, and they have made it clear to me that, Candace, I know you don't know anything about the military, but you should know, particularly regarding Fort Wuka. It is an intelligence base. It's not where you're going to scramble jets off of after a terrorist attack. This is where they train people that are in the intelligence community for covert missions. That is why this is significant. They confirmed that building that he said, this guy really does just have the best or work luck ever, and just gets out of his 25-year-long NDA and stumbles into another, what could be, we're keeping this open, another federal operation. And so I think it's important, and I have hesitated to do this for a different reason. I think we need to allow this man to tell a story and to explain who it is that he believes that he saw that day, exactly what he believes happened, since everything thus far that he has told me has checked out. I find him to be incredibly, or I should just say, I find him to be actually quite credible. He's very credible, and he's very sincere, and I think it helps. I don't want to be the middle person. I don't want to be the middleman and tell you this guy's credible. I want you guys to feel the same way when he walked through what happened and how he was questioned and what his sense was of why it was happening. I want you to recognize his experience. I've reached out to him and I've said, look, we've got this last week on the show. Do you want to come on and tell your story? And he has said yes. And obviously, I think that we need to learn more about Brian Harpole's whereabouts. And I can tell you that I now know exactly which flight he was on when he came back from Tokyo. That was the thing that I had wrong. I said, oh, well, Tokyo had to have happened at the same time. I was wrong, obviously, because you gain so much time coming back. You essentially fly backwards in time. He actually lands into Los Angeles on a direct flight from Tokyo, landing into Los Angeles at 6:45 p.m. on the 7th, before continuing down to Dallas, getting there very early into Dallas, very early morning on the 8th. It is possible for Brian Harpole to be able to make that meeting at Fort Wuka. It is just possible. So we are going to keep prodding this particular narrative because, like I said, I sense a panic here that is very real, and I've never seen this kind of a sustained psychological attack on my character, meaning they are now quite literally engaged in fan fiction. They're just making stuff up every day. I wake up and I go, I don't even know what this is about. None of this is true. And I've realized it's because they want to deplete our energy. They want to have our resources go to fighting stupid stuff. And we're sitting here and responding to every tit for tat. And we're not focusing on timelines and delivering this information and reaching out. We only should be spending our time on the Egyptian plains and what happened on Fort Wuka base. Nothing else. Obviously, other stuff matters. If you have information about what happened on September 10th, it matters. But this is where their panic is. These two things, it's very clear this is where their panic is. And I almost just finished there's just one more plane, SUBTV, that had the longest of flight logs for the Egyptian planes. And I just wanted to get the finishing touches on that before we put it onto our website. But that is going to be, I know I told you we're going to do that today, but we're going to bump that until tomorrow because I do feel confident in stating that those Egyptian planes are linked to Israel, and that fully explains the mass freak out. So we have, well, big days coming up ahead of us, guys. We're going to have this guy give you his testimony, and it's very controversial, but it is the truth and we must follow it. And we are also going to make that accessible for you. Maybe I can even get it up tonight on CandaceOwens.com. And I also think that I should share the pictures of the inside of the car to the people who have been investigating that and have felt that things were real. And we'll take a brief pause here before I answer some of your questions and comments.